This is CBC Here and Now.
Minus 13, but here we are.
It's pretty cold. It's pretty cold.
It's a different kind of cold.
I hate going out when it's cold.
It's cold,
Yeah.
but that's okay.
Well, it's a tough day to be outside as a deep freeze blankets the province. So what are people saying about the weather?
And in the name of science, we try to freeze an egg, along with some other Ashley-driven experiments.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes.
And I'm Anthony Germain.
We start with the freezing cold that has descended upon the province.
It's a cold day to have to work outside. Just asked the St. John's Regional Fire Department that question. They doused a house fire on Bacalou Street in the center of St. John's this afternoon. And they ran into trouble, though, when a supply line broke loose from a hydrant and water shot up into the air. And that sent a stream running down the street, freezing before it even reached the bottom of the hill.
Now, a city salt truck was on the scene within minutes trying to melt the sheet of ice. But the good news is it doesn't appear anybody was hurt in that fire, but it certainly would have been cold working outdoors in those temperatures. On the west coast, few braved the streets in Corner Brook today, and those who did were bundled up from head to toe. The wind chill made it feel like minus 35. That, along with the blowing snow, made it hard to see.
Now, the cold weather caused slick roads as well. This truck lost control coming down Massey Drive. Unfortunately, nobody was hurt. Schools
were closed for the day, keeping many inside. Roads were cleared and salted, but freezing temperatures made for difficult driving.
Well, here in St. John's, our Malone Mullen hit the streets and the parks and the mall
to see how people are coping with the cold.
Well, temperatures today are about as cold as on the surface of Mars, so not many people outside in this today. But for those of you who were, we asked, how do you deal with the cold?
It was only 3 people skating, so I said, well, our best bet is to go in the morning so that we're not bombarded in the evening with a crowd of people. Minus 13, but here we are.
It's minus 30 with the wind chill. That's not bothering.
That's nothing. We're Newfoundlanders.
Gloves. I gotta have my gloves on. No hat, but gloves.
Yeah. What do you do to keep yourself warm?
Well, keep busy. Keep busy.
I'm wearing 2 shirts, a sweater, and this big old jacket, and I'm still froze.
Cover your face.
Right.
Keep your skin covered.
Scarf, always a scarf, I find, because like wind just blows underneath jackets, I find, and like the scarf just like, yeah.
For me, long johns is the answer.
That's what I was going to say.
Because we walks every evening too. So in the evenings when we walks, we put on our long johns.
Are they woolly?
No. The long ones are better, believe it or not.
But I usually go outside to walk, but today I'm not going to do that. It's a bit too cold.
Can you finish this sentence for me? It's as cold today as...
There's only 2 expressions come to mind. Neither one of them are fit for TV.
Thank you.
That's so great. That's exactly how most people felt, I'm sure, right across the province. This morning, these were the temperatures that you woke up to. So if you weren't bundled up, you certainly felt it. Minus 16 in St. John's towards the coast. We're sitting around minus 20. And, similar through Central as well, up through Labrador, minus 30 this morning. Those wind chills we're feeling closer to minus 45. And they're going to continue as we head through the night tonight with those extreme cold warnings for all of Newfoundland and then up through Lab City, Churchill Falls, and the Valley as well as we head through the overnight. Again, looking at those wind chills around minus 45. The other story is we're still dealing with the snow squalls on the west coast. Snow squall warnings in place from Corner Brook down through to Port aux Basques, including Deer Lake, and that will continue generally as we head through the overnight. But take a look at these temperatures again by morning, dipping a couple of degrees colder even than what we saw this morning. And then as we head through the day tomorrow, eventually these winds will ease slightly. And then we're going to see some cloud cover push in for the southwestern portion of the island. Maybe some snow with that as well. I'll have all those details and your full forecast coming up.
Upset my whole life tremendously. I had a newborn boy in '89 when the youth inquiry started. It just turned my life upside down.
Coming up in 20 minutes, it's been 30 years since the Mount Cashel scandal erupted and led to a public inquiry. We'll hear from someone who lived through it.
A sexual abuse victim from this province is headed to the Vatican. Catholic bishops from around the world are descending on the Vatican ahead of a 4-day summit that aims to tackle sex abuse in the church. Pope Francis calls the issue, quote, the urgent challenge of our time. A group of Canadian survivors will also be there, and some of them will be meeting with organizers. Gemma Hickey is among the group traveling to the Vatican, and she was a victim of abuse by clergy, and she founded the Pathways Foundation, an organization that advocates on behalf of survivors.
I think it's going to be really empowering for me and for other survivors to be coming together to address this global crisis, but also to realize that we're not alone. It's very isolating to be abused by a priest because of the culture of secrecy within the Catholic Church. So the fact that I can look around and see other survivors, other people who have had similar life experiences as mine, will be very comforting and therapeutic. But I can't help but be a little bit skeptical because it's happening behind closed doors with all of these bishops, and the survivors are outside. So I don't know how the church is going to move forward on reconciliation when they're still keeping the people who are affected outside of the conversation.
Well, the man who's been at the helm of the St. John's Airport for almost 15 years has announced he's retiring. Keith Collins will officially step down as president and CEO at the end of June. Collins joined the Airport Authority in January 2005. According to a release, since that time, passenger volumes have increased by 28%, and more than $287 million were spent in the airport infrastructure to meet growth and demand. The board will now begin the search for a new airport president and CEO.
In Happy Valley Goose Bay today, lawyers got their chance to grill the auditor at the ongoing Muskrat Falls inquiry. Dan Simmons, a lawyer for Nalcor, got the first crack questioning Auditor Scott Schaefer on some key points presented in the report. Now, much revolved around Nalcor's decision to make Astaldi the lead contractor and how contracts were arranged. The report shows that Astaldi's performance was lagging in the early stages of the project, and the contractor was effectively fired last year. At one point today, Simmons challenged Schaefer to explain why the report was so critical of Nalcor's decision to choose Astaldi.
All things being equal, I'm having trouble seeing why, if the technical score that Astaldi had was as good or better than the other bidders, and their price was lower, that somehow the Astaldi bid should be rejected and one of the other higher bids accepted. Is that what you're saying should have happened here?
From my perspective, when you have a major piece of work like this, which is basically the whole project really, when you think about it, if you have bids that are coming in like this, and there's such a difference in hours, I think, and 2/3 of the scoring is going to be based on low bid, and you look at what Merrill says about it, yeah, I potentially think they should have thought about a little bit more, absolutely.
The lawyers for the government later asked Schaefer if the provincial government was made aware of the cost overruns in 2013, and Schaefer says there is no evidence to suggest that the government was notified.
Siobhan Cody says if she meets with the Prime Minister, she will not ask him to help pay for Muskrat Falls. Amid the SNC-Lavalin scandal, it seems Justin Trudeau's planned visit to St. John's is still a go. He's set to touch down tomorrow night and stay until Friday. Now, those comments from the Natural Resources Minister are in response to PUB reports indicating hydro bills will double in 2021 unless multiple steps are taken. Premier Dwight Ball has said taxpayers won't shoulder the burden of skyrocketing power bills.
Halifax City Hall is hosting a community gathering in support of a refugee family that lost 7 children in a house fire. It's the latest in a series of vigils for the Barho family. Last night, neighbors held a vigil outside the home.
Mom, you know, and the tragedy, it's just can't even put into words. So it's all you can do is just be here to show your support.
The Barhos fled the war in Syria and were looking for a fresh start in this country. They were welcomed with open arms, and both parents are now in hospital. The father is in critical condition, his wife overwhelmed with grief. A GoFundMe page has already raised over $300,000 for the couple so far.
Well, after a lull in heavy equipment heists, yet another bank machine robbery on the Avalon this week, this time in Portugal Cove, St. Phillips. Just last month, a slew of heavy equipment and ATM thefts dominated the headlines. From backhoes to front-end loaders, thieves are using big equipment to carry out their crimes. Now, industry experts say when it comes to cracking down on that kind of theft, owners and operators of those machines have options to secure them, but it comes at a cost. Here now, Cease Hare reports.
It's no secret in the construction industry that these pieces of equipment are easy to steal. Here's the funny part. It's also no secret that preventing the thefts are just as easy. It falls to the owners and the operators. A few weeks ago, we showed how easy it is to buy a master key from a dealership, and the one we bought in St. John's started equipment an hour away in Shearstown. In early January on the Northeast Avalon, in a span of 1 week, heavy equipment was stolen on 4 separate occasions. And it happened this week, too. Each time the goal was to steal a bank machine, or try to. Charges are pending against 2 St. John's men for an ATM theft attempt on Newfoundland Drive. George Kleinsteiber is a retired OPP officer and is now a heavy equipment theft consultant. He says sometimes owners refuse to spend a few extra bucks on anti-theft options.
They'll walk out of the door with a $100,000 piece of equipment with no anti-theft immobilized system in that machine at all. It's just ready to be taken with a standard key.
Kleinsteiber adds sometimes it's the equipment operators who are the problem.
Each time they shut that machine down, they need to be thinking about how to protect it from theft. What do I need to do to make the machine immobilized so that no one can take it?
And although master keys are the norm, the thefts are still preventable. That's according to Fred Muldowney Brooks, who's a risk service manager with Northbridge Insurance.
Kill switches for batteries. There can be fuel disconnects. There's cab covers that you can put on to lock the windows to prevent people from getting into the equipment. Park it in a place that's well lit, or even corral it with other equipment, putting locks on the hydraulic cylinders, locks on the steering column, tire deflators, or even tire locks, immobilizer systems, tracking system, GPS systems.
In this crime spree, luckily so far, only buildings have been damaged and no one's been hurt. One insurance expert told me that if you're a heavy equipment owner and you end up in court, it helps if you can prove that you did everything possible to prevent the gear from being stolen. Cease Hare, CBC News, St. John's.
Do you remember that ad? There used to be that old ad. Remember, it was sort of your brain.
Brain on drugs?
Yeah.
Your brain.
This is your brain on cold.
Yes, it is.
We bundle up and leave the studio.
To conduct some cold weather science experiments with Ashley. That's coming up.
This weather forecast is brought to you by Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism. 5,000 kilometers of groomed trails are waiting to be explored. Embrace winter today.
Well, as we were planning how to cover the cold that has hit much of the island, some brainiac at our story meeting said we should go out and try to do some experiments with our scientific meteorologist, Ashley, to show just how cold it is. Yeah.
It went well, we think.
Yeah, I want one of those Weather Whiz Kid cards now. Whiz Geezer.
We've thought out though, yes?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Have a look. So we're going to start with this plastic bottle. Ashley, what's that about?
We are. So we're going to take this, which is at technically room temperature right now. We're going to put it outside in the cold and see what happens to it.
All right. Let's give it a whirl. Okay, so there's the bottle. So what's going to happen?
Well, it's already starting, but it should start to collapse. And the reason why, oh, there it goes. The reason why it should collapse is because the temperature inside the bottle is much warmer than the outside air temperature, which creates more pressure. The pressure difference creates that collapse.
You can see it happening.
There you go, yep.
It's getting skinnier. I wish that would happen to me when I come out in the cold. We have more experiments to do, but I have got to make a headgear change because it is just
It's chilly here.
way too cold. All right, time for some more serious headgear. Experiment number 2
Experiment number 2.
What are we going to do?
We're going to try and freeze an egg.
Freezing an egg.
Let's
All
see
right.
how fast it happens.
Okay, so Ashley, what's the next experiment?
We're going to freeze an egg. So it's about -13, -14, -26 with the wind chill. So we'll see how long it takes to freeze.
And obviously, we're out here freezing. So what's the purpose of this?
Well, eggs are pretty delicate.
Yeah.
So we'll pretend it's our skin and we'll see the reason why it's so important to bundle up with the wind chill and at these temperatures.
And you're going to take your mitts off to do this.
I am.
All right.
Okay.
Get cracking.
It's frozen. Look at that.
All right.
It's not going anywhere. It looks yummy. I'd eat that. I mean,
I wouldn't.
dip
Do you remember that ad? There used to be that old ad. Remember, it was sort of your brain.
Brain on drugs?
Yeah.
This is your brain.
This is your brain on cold.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Sunny side up without the sun.
Yeah. Well, they say, you know, it's warm enough to freeze or warm enough to fry an egg on
Sidewalk.
the sidewalk, and it's clearly cold enough to fry an egg in a frying pan.
You see that little plop away from the pan. Even the camera said, "I've had enough."
It just went
click.
It was too cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, a bit of fun.
Yeah, it was
still cold.
My goodness.
Yeah.
And one viewer tried a cold weather experiment of his own, and this is a popular one.
Yeah.
Here's Mark Gray in Bonavista tossing boiling water in the air.
So you look at that, -29 out, and that's with the wind chill. And away they go.
It kind of turns into
snow, yeah. It evaporates.
Go.
Woof, pretty fast.
Yeah, very quickly. We should have tried that one here, but I honestly didn't think it would work. But
Yeah, now for those of you watching from the big land, we know you're like rolling your eyes, you know, towny, sooky babies. The Newfoundland Turnip on Facebook is with you, for those of you in Labrador, posting this.
Labrador, it's literally -40 here all winter. Newfoundland, yeah, but it's different down here. It's damp and it gets in your bones.
Yeah, that one got a lot of shares today. So what can we say? We're just wimpier than people in Labrador.
Yeah,
it's true. And I was
Yeah.
thinking about that too because I've experienced some pretty cold temperatures
right.
up north. But
Yeah.
today, it does. Like when that wind hits your face, it hurts.
It does.
Yeah, it definitely does.
So
how long is it going to last?
It's going to get colder, right?
Yep, we're going to see some cooler temperatures. We're really not going to get any relief from these below zero temperatures, at least for the end of the week, unfortunately. So take a look at what we're seeing right now. We're sitting around 16 degrees in St. John's, 19 in Gander, same through to Corner Brook and along the coast as well. Up through Labrador, pretty similar temperatures, -20 in Lab City, and Makovic right now sitting at -23. Factor in that wind chill though, feeling much cooler. -30s right across the board at this moment, and we do still have that extreme cold warning in place for all of Newfoundland and then up through Lab City as well. Those wind chills will be a little bit cooler, sitting around or feeling more like -45. And that's because the winds are still quite strong. If we take a look at what we're seeing right now, these are sustained winds upwards of about 28 kilometers per hour, generally out of the northwest. And then down along the northeast coast, we're seeing sustained winds upwards of about 70 kilometers per hour for Bonavista, with those gusts nearing 80 kilometers per hour. So the wind chills will continue to be quite cold as we head towards the morning hours. Actually feeling a couple of, as the temperature drops a couple more degrees, it's going to feel a little bit worse as well. This is what you're looking at when you walk out the door tomorrow morning. So definitely bundle up yet again into the afternoon, and then eventually those winds will ease, so the wind chills won't be so bad into the afternoon tomorrow, and those temperatures are actually going to climb a little bit as well. So that's certainly good news through the day tomorrow. So taking a look at the satellite radar, the satellite's still not picking up on those snow squalls, but you can see the streamers, and that's what we're dealing with tonight there as I zoom over a little bit. That will continue. So we do still have that snow squall warning in place from Port aux Basques up through to Corner Brook, including Deer Lake through the overnight. And those temperatures are going to dip again. So it looks like -9 for Corner Brook, -24 for Grand Falls, Windsor. Gander looking at that chance of a few flurries as well, -21. And we'll see that potential for flurries along the northeast coast with those winds picking up a little bit more as well. Gusts near 70 kilometers per hour overnight tonight. And then up through Labrador, another calm but cold night again. So Lab City sitting at -33. The winds will eventually ease for you though, but along the coast we're going to hang on to those gusty winds between 40 and 70 kilometers per hour through the night tonight. So taking a look at the satellite, or rather the future tracker tomorrow, another low, or rather a low, will make its way, just bringing in some cloud cover for generally the southeastern portion of Newfoundland. Slight chance of a few flurries up through Lab City as well. And then as that low skirts, could see that potential for a few flurries into the afternoon tomorrow. But overall, should see a mix of sun and cloud, very similar to what we saw today. Temperature sitting a couple of degrees warmer as well. -10 for Grand Falls, Windsor, -12 in Gander with plenty of sunshine. And then there's that temperature sitting around -11 and -12 with those winds easing. But again, we'll see that cloud cover move in late day. Up through the Northern Peninsula, plenty of sunshine, -teens. Same up for the southeastern portion of Labrador. And then we'll see that for the rest of Labrador as well, with plenty of sunshine. And it looks like that's going to continue over the next couple of days. I'll have a look towards the weekend when we come back.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, basketball star Carl English is lending his name to the Special Olympics in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Certainly is, helping to raise money for their annual Winter Games. He's got a custom painted pair of his big size 13 sneakers. That's going to be auctioned off to raise money for the 780 Special Olympians in this province. Artist Daniel Frampton, who uses the name Sailor Danny, created the artwork.
And a second piece of Frampton's art features English as well, and it will also be put up for auction. English says he jumped at the chance to help raise awareness and raise money for the Special Olympics Winter Games.
Sports is difficult enough, and the things that they're facing on a daily basis is amazing. And then the fact that this whole cause, I mean, the fact that, in my opinion, that they are forced to raise these kind of funds to, to participate in these sports is probably a downfall of what we're doing as people and as a province. But anyway, we'll try to bring our awareness to it.
Nice paintings there, right?
Yeah, really nice.
Now, those Winter Games, they're going to be held in Grand Falls, Windsor this weekend and next weekend.
Yeah, and you may have noticed English is sporting a cast on his left hand, and that's because he's sidelined at the moment with a torn ligament.
We told you, jammed his thumb. Now, he does tell CBC that everything went well with the surgery, and he's hoping to be back on the courts in time for the playoffs.
Next on Here and Now, 30 years after the Mount Cashel scandal erupted and led to a public inquiry.
This month marks the 30th anniversary of the reopening of a covered-up police investigation into child abuse at the Mount Cashel orphanage, the children's home run by the Irish Christian Brothers. In the weeks and months after the investigation reopened, the media reported countless details of abuse that boys at that orphanage suffered. All of this led to a public inquiry. And tonight, we're looking at that dark period of this province's history, looking at what's changed and where challenges still exist. And a warning, some of the details are disturbing.
They literally picked me up and handed me to the same man I told them about.
My childhood basically was taken from me.
And when he came to my bed, he slipped his hand down the front of my pants.
We can't let these people go. We just can't stop the investigation.
That unfortunately and regretfully, as far as I know, nothing was done.
Just even to go back and think about, or trying to put something together to think about what happened 44 years ago. I was 10 years old. It was a nightmare.
I was 25 years old, I guess, at the time, and we had a little newsroom at the Sunday Express, and things started to come out about the Mount Cashel story through our newspaper, but also I think there were some things that happened on talk radio in town, and it just became a story that once it started, it gained momentum pretty quickly.
This was not a local story. This was not a story of St. John's or Newfoundland or even of Canada. That there were commentators, lawyers, church officials, writers of various sorts throughout North America, throughout the world, were paying attention to what was happening with Mount Cashel and were drawing lessons from it.
Worst part of the nightmare was being removed from Mount Cashel, going to the police, hopefully that they were going to do something with the scandal that was going on behind closed doors. Bought in, give police statements, figured great, we'll have it all dealt with. Figured we had a concrete foundation around us. Little did we know that we were in for a major surprise when we went back. There was an investigation started, there was nothing ever done, and we were back into the hands of the abusers.
I was fairly new to St. John's at the time, and I didn't know where Mount Cashel was. I had to get a map out, and I remember driving over there, going into the parking lot, finding it, and going up and knocking on the front doors and asking some questions at the time. I know that, you know, from the moment I wrote the first story, I knew that it was a big story, that we were talking about a miscarriage of justice. We were talking about a kind of conspiracy to cover up the abuse of vulnerable children at this orphanage.
It was a glass after being busted in there. We went to see Brother Ringlish, and the son of a bitch gave us a couple of blows to the head.
It traumatized me and my kids. I got married at a young age in '89 when the inquiry started. It upset my whole life tremendously. I had a newborn boy, and in '89 when the youth inquiry started, it just turned my life upside down. A lot of the guys who went through the inquiry are very sick. A couple of the guys had committed suicide. Close friends of mine committed suicide. It took the good out of a lot of people.
I think one of the things that we sometimes forget about the Mount Cashel story is that all of the boys that were at Mount Cashel were wards of the state. They were the responsibility of the government. And in the end, I think, you know, there was a conspiracy on one hand to cover up what happened from the side of the church, I think, in terms of moving Christian Brothers out of the province and whatnot. But there was also a real feeling that the government and the system that was in place to care for these young people had just abandoned them.
I was scared. I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't know who to talk to. I really was lost.
The circumstances of today are very, very different than they were from 30 years ago. The training of social workers is very different. The supervision of foster homes is very different. The vetting of foster care parents is very different.
I think I spoke to both the chief and the assistant chief.
Do you recall what was said?
Well, that was the end of the investigation. They told me there would be no further investigation. That was it.
I don't remember at any time talking to Helio personally. I wouldn't go over the assistant chief who was heading up this and who was responsible for the operations of CID.
People in the Justice Department and also in the upper levels of the police department didn't actually ever come clean and admit what they had done. And what they had done, to me, was clear, that they had intervened, stopped the police investigation, and didn't think twice about the boys that were most affected by this story, the victims of the crimes.
Let's look back at the whole aspect of it all. We talk about the Christian Brothers who paid their dues big time, went to jail. What about the government officials, the politicians, the cover-up with the police? There was nothing ever done with them.
I think the word punishment is relevant in some cases, but I think accountability is perhaps a more important word. What can be learned from what went wrong here? What did we as a society need to learn about how to care for children whose own families were unable to care for them?
I have a little faith. I brought two boys into this world. They got in trouble, both of them got in trouble. Like myself, you know, I've been through a hard road with both of them. I changed as I got older. My kids, I will walk through this world with them, through thick and thin, and I will guide them down the right road.
I think there will always be some people who are, who by reasons of illness or some sick and frustrated power dynamic will want to sexually exploit children. New times present new problems. So I don't think we can ever not be vigilant as a parent, as a society.
The new generation growing up today needs to know that this can never repeat itself, and to remind these predators that this can never happen again.
It's amazing watching that 30 years later, Carol. I remember watching this from Quebec. Of course, half the family, very Catholic in Quebec as well, thinking, how could this possibly be happening in Newfoundland? And if there's any good that came out, I mean, Newfoundland really cracked this open. Massachusetts, the United States, Europe, right across the world. It wasn't unique to here. And the reckoning started in this province.
Yeah, and this week, actually, the topic is going to be front and center with the Catholic Church. As we mentioned earlier in the show, Catholic bishops are meeting tomorrow at the Vatican for a 4-day summit to tackle sex abuse in the church.
It can flare up any moment. We are continuing to walk on eggshells.
Walking on eggshells indeed. Up next, a Newfoundlander in Haiti has the latest on the trouble brewing in that country.
Welcome back. The violent protests in Haiti continue to be on hold, but the unrest is still bubbling below the surface. Violence erupted earlier this month with protests over alleged government corruption and the misappropriation of billions of dollars. Haiti is one of the poorest countries in the world, and the chaos has Haitians struggling to meet their basic needs. The Canadian government still has a travel advisory in place, warning that the security situation could deteriorate quickly. One woman from this province is in Haiti right now. Karen Huckster is from Springdale, but she runs a nonprofit children's home called Hands Across the Sea in Deschapelles, about 50 kilometers from Port-au-Prince. I spoke with her this afternoon. Karen, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm glad to be here.
And tell us what your situation is right now.
The situation today is actually called. I've been able to send 2 workers to the market to purchase food for the mission. The vehicles are traveling back and forth the roads.
And how many children are in the compound where you are?
At the moment, we have 17.
17 children, wow. We've all seen the violent images of the protests on TV. It's frightening to see and frightening to imagine actually being in a place like that and trying to keep yourself safe. What's it like being responsible for 17 children as well?
Well, the older ones, they know and they understand what's going on in their country. And the younger ones have been very active, keeping them busy, entertaining them, playing with them, so that they don't think about anything that might be going on outside. They're having fun.
So they don't really know, the younger ones don't really know the extent of the violence happening there now.
No, and I don't want them to.
Yeah. What have these past couple of weeks been like for you?
Oh, I call it ugly. It's devastating. But we are safe. We're safe inside these mission walls. And the people that have left did it by hiring a helicopter to get them to the airport.
Has this affected your supply situation, your supply of food, water, or electricity, or anything like that?
Well, we did have good drinking water supply the day before yesterday. We have food coming in today, and we will run out of food today, this afternoon.
And what about the schools right now? Are the children back in school, or are the schools still closed down?
No. We have our school only 3 or 4 feet from this main compound. But no, that compound is closed. Mm-hmm. It's not safe for parents to send their children.
And the protests have settled this week, but what are your concerns now going forward? What are your fears going forward?
It can flare up any moment. We are continuing to walk on eggshells. The opposition doing this sent out a paper yesterday saying, go get supplies, we are going to heat up again on Friday.
And you've been in Haiti for a long time now, about 24 years, is that right?
Yes, yes.
What's it like for you seeing the Haitian people go through this turmoil?
It is just heartbreaking. I find it, I love those people. There are a lot of precious, innocent people in this country, and they try very hard to make a living. They are innocent. The children are innocent, and that hurts. I can only do so much. Often my hands are tied. But it is very difficult to see how hungry they really are.
Well, Karen Huckster, thank you so much for telling us about your situation, and I hope you and your children stay safe.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
To national politics now, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is publicly apologizing to Jody Wilson-Raybould, but it has nothing to do with the ongoing SNC-Lavalin affair. He says he should have come to her defense sooner in the aftermath of her resignation from cabinet.
I apologize to Jody Wilson-Raybould because I wasn't quick enough to condemn in unequivocal terms the comments and commentary and cartoons made about her last week. They were absolutely unacceptable, and I should have done it.
Meanwhile, an NDP motion to hold a public inquiry into alleged political interference from the Prime Minister's office was defeated today in the House of Commons.
And Jody Wilson-Raybould is at the center of the SNC-Lavalin controversy. She says she wants to tell her side of the story. Today, the former Attorney General abstained from voting on matters relating to her, but she stood on a point of order to explain why.
I am seeking counsel on this matter of what I can and cannot say. I understand fully that Canadians want to know the truth and want transparency. Privilege and confidentiality are not mine to waive, and I hope that I have the opportunity to speak my truth.
Well, we now know the date of the next federal budget, which could have an impact on when the provincial budget happens. Finance Minister Bill Morneau made the announcement during question period today.
On March 19th, we'll be introducing Budget 2019. The next steps in our plan to ensure middle-class optimism and an economy that works for all Canadians.
This will be the Liberals' last budget before the federal election on October the 21st.
The story of the overgrown hiking trail that became the foundation of a friendship. Sunday at noon and Monday at 7.
This weather update is brought to you by Beltone, helping the world hear better.
That Land and Sea promo that was on just then really made me lament
Shorts, sunshine,
warm temperatures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not the case today.
Long way to go.
Yeah. How much longer are we going to be in this deep freeze
Well, for a couple more days. As we head towards the weekend, we'll start to see a little bit of relief, which will feel nice, certainly if those winds die down. So if we take a look at the future tracker for Friday, you'd see that low overnight make its way and then pull out. So we will potentially see some cloudy periods through the day, but overall, we're not looking at much in the way of snowfall. That will come as we head towards the beginning of next week. So taking a look at the forecast, though, temperatures will start to warm up. So, not quite seeing the double digits right across the board, but sitting around -6 along the south coast, -9 for the Avalon, and then we're going to see temperatures sitting generally between there for parts of central. Up through the Straits, generally sitting in the minus teens. You're going to hang on to these cooler temperatures at least for a couple more days. And then up through Lab City, again, mix of sun and cloud and temperature near -18. That's generally the story. Maybe a few onshore flurries again as we head towards the day, the afternoon rather, on Friday. And that's just because we're still in that northwest flow. We're not really seeing much movement from that. So looking at ahead towards the weekend, eventually, we will see a mix of sun and cloud, or rather we're going to continue to see a mix of sun and cloud. Along the south northeast coast, rather, we will see that potential for a few flurries again as that low skirts. Otherwise, Sunday afternoon looks absolutely gorgeous. Another mix of sun and cloud. And then that's when the next system moves in. So overnight towards Monday is looking like when we're going to see that snow. This will be the biggest amount of snow that we'll see over the next little bit, and that will move off through the day on Tuesday. So taking a look at the forecast over the next 5 days, there's your temperatures. So not moving much from what we're seeing today, between -9 and -11 right through Sunday. But the good news is that sun will continue. The winds will eventually ease as well. And then Monday, they'll pick right back up again with that snow moving in, and you can see those temperatures moderating a little bit back to the minus single digits, which is actually still a little bit below seasonal for this time of year. For central Newfoundland, nothing but sunshine, it looks like, right through Sunday, and then when that next system moves in, that's when we'll see that change again, that temperature sitting around -5 as your afternoon high for Monday. Otherwise, hanging on to those chilly temperatures. Same for western Newfoundland. Chance of squalls tomorrow afternoon, and then that changes to the potential for flurries as that low moves in, continuing on Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday, plenty of sunshine with snow moving in on Monday. And up through Labrador, we're looking at sunshine again, thanks to that ridge of high pressure that's in place. Temperature sitting in the minus teens. Into Sunday night, and Monday is when we'll see those flurries, and temperature sitting around -11 by the time that happens. And then for western Labrador, again, sunshine. So nice and quiet, which is nice. A little bit of a wind chill, though. And then Sunday, we're looking at that potential for some flurries late day, and then same into Monday with a high near -13. So that's a look at your forecast. I'll have your weather photo. It's a beautiful one when I come back.
Well, CBC News has learned that questions are being raised about the amount of work being done by the Senate ethics officer. His office has not produced a single report in more than a year and a half. And this has some senators wondering what exactly he's doing. CBC's John Paul Tasker reports.
Pierre Legault is the Senate ethics officer, and his main job is to keep an eye on wayward senators and prevent ethical transgressions in the upper house. But the problem is he hasn't filed a report in more than a year. In fact, he hasn't filed an ethics inquiry report since 2017 when he was first appointed by Prime Minister Trudeau. And with an office budget of more than $1 million a year, questions are being raised as to whether Legault is the best person for the job. And a letter obtained by CBC News independent Senator Frances Lankin is asking her colleagues on the Red Chamber's Ethics Committee to step in. She calls the snail's pace of progress on ethics reports very concerning, and she says there must be a resolution to unreasonable delays. Well, she's received a response from the chair and deputy chair of that ethics committee. They say they are willing to step in. They might slap some timelines on Legault to make sure his work is done in a more timely way. A spokesperson for the Senate ethics officer told CBC News they would not comment on how many days he worked last year, even though he's paid up to $800 a day by taxpayers to do his job. They also said they would not report on just how far along they are on 4 outstanding ethics reports, saying they would provide an update in 3 months' time when they're obligated by law to do so, leaving Canadian taxpayers and senators in the dark for a little while longer. John Paul Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
An inquiry into phone, cable, and internet service providers confirms what many Canadians can't stand about the industry's sales tactics. The CRTC says they are misleading and aggressive. A report released today suggests those practices happen in-store, online, over the phone, and during door-to-door campaigns, and that the most vulnerable are seniors, people with disabilities, and people whose first language is not English or French. Canada's telecom regulator says it's unacceptable, and it will be looking for solutions to these ongoing problems.
I promised you a beautiful picture.
Oh, wow.
Did you happen to see the moon at all last night?
No,
It's
unfortunately.
the super snow moon, and the sky's clear just enough for this person to grab this photo on the Avalon.
That's gorgeous.
It is beautiful. I'll tell you where this picture was taken when we come back.
Well, I guess it goes without saying that many of us really dislike shoveling snow.
But Toronto's Robert Greenfield has turned the mundane job into a masterpiece.
He transformed his backyard rink, just watch this, into what he calls the Snowna Lisa. And it's Greenfield's first attempt at fine art. Usually this guy does cartoons or hockey logos.
Yeah, you might say this is his coolest effort yet. At least that's what thousands of social media likes are saying. Wow.
Let's check this out. And that's it's a hockey stick he's using, right, to make
For
this
the detail
amazing
work.
thing?
That is absolutely amazing.
Yep. Fantastic. Look at that. Yeah.
So beautiful.
He should go to a farmer's field and make Jesus just to mess with people.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, it's true. Little prank.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
What a shot.
That's good.
Amazing.
That's really
You can't
good.
do it with pencil and paper, let alone
No.
shovel and
I know.
snow.
No.
Wow.
Must have practiced.
Yeah.
Speaking of snow, during the break I asked you what a snow moon is. I've never heard of snow moon before.
Yeah, so every month the full moon has a name, and February's is snow. So it's called the snow moon.
And
it's a super snow moon because it is larger than the normal moon.
A super snow moon.
Mhm.
Wow. Imagine standing on top of that. Is that
Fairyland.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So beautiful picture there.
Super shot.
I saw it when we left the studio last night, but it wasn't as beautiful as that because this was obviously earlier. But Harry Bryan captured that photo, sent it to me, and yeah, had to show it.
Way to go, Harry.
Yeah.
That is nice.
Yeah, beautiful shot. If you have any weather photos that you'd like to share with us, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca, and we'll try and get them on the show.
Right. And make sure to bundle up, because if you thought today was cold and last night was cold, tonight and tomorrow.
That's right. It's going to be the same thing. So bundle up, check on your pets.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure all the animals are indoors.
Exactly.
For sure.
Good advice. All right, have a great night.
Good night.
Good night.